Spring is showing up in the flower beds and in the trees around the boathouse, and that means that it's getting warm enough to continue on Arabella's planking. Steve and Carolyn will get ready and started on that this week, while Alix puts the taper on the mizzenmast. Steve and Carolyn got the second of the bilge stringers installed, and Steve was getting more of those futtocks or hook scarves cut and ready, while Alix needed to decide how to do the taper on the mast in a way that could help fix that accident from a couple weeks ago where the router bit dug in too deep.
This is the top of the mast right here. And this right here says that it should be 6 inches in diameter, which is what the mast normally is, and it starts to taper from here all the way up to the top. This right here is supposed to be 5 1/4 inches diameter. Our cut is about right in here. What I think we're gonna do is lower the 6 inches diameter down to here and start the taper there so that the 5 1/4 ends up at that cut over there, which means at this point I have to modify the jig that I first made so that we can router around a round surface because now the diameter is different, so that first jig I made doesn't fit anymore. This is such a beautiful stick, a beautiful mast that we can't let it go just because of that one little piece. And anyways, it's not that big of an issue, so we think that this will fix it. Now the straight taper is marked, but before we mark the last one, I got a little note from Steve and Carolyn. This big. It's not bad. Well, moment of truth. All the curves are cut. Time to just take them down.
We are not flashing back to winter, folks. They say here in New England that if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute, it will change. You don't mind the snow. He likes the snow a lot better than he likes the heat. I would too if I wore a fur coat. We had 70 degrees Fahrenheit just this week, and now we have snow. Been motoring along on the bilge stringers. as you can see, they're essentially internal planking. And what the bilge stringers do is they cross a few plank lines. So if the boat wants to twist, what ends up happening is the planks actually move fore and aft along each other. And by being screwed into the bronze strapping, that'll resist that, as well as having the bilge stringers cross the plank lines will also help that. And the other thing it does is where we have this flat run here, which happens to be right around waterline, it adds just another layer so that as there's pressure coming in on the hull, if we were to hit something, it's trying to push in the planking and it's trying to push in the bilge stringers. Having all those working together adds a lot of strength and rigidity to the hull. Now, if we had big, beefy sawn frames, we'd more than likely just put in one, maybe two heavier bilge stringers down the boat. But because this is a bent frame boat, the scandalings are smaller and lighter because there's no grain run out and they're one solid frame. We want it to be able to flex and move a little bit. So sawn frames get their strength from just their immense rigidity. Bent frame boats get a lot of their strength from being mildly flexible. So if you were to put a big impact here in the hull, this frame would bend and these frames would bend and that load would get dissipated. Where in a sawn frame boat, that still happens, but those frames are much bigger and beefier and they're not going to move as much. We're going to work on getting these bilge stringers cleaned up and ready to go in. And we're going to work on getting ready to dive back into planking. Jack arrives in 3 days and Wes arrives in a week. And that'll complete our planking crew. And hopefully, in the time that they're here, we can get the rest of these oaks on, which will leave us just a couple planks up by the sheer to do, which will be really great to see all this closed in and the bilge sealing in, and hopefully we can accomplish it. Everyone for the crew is known entity. They've all been here before, and so I think it'll make just getting to work a lot faster. And Jack and Carolyn are both shipwrights and know what to do. So they can be on either side of the boat. Wes can help, I can run one side of the boat. And hopefully we'll just motor through it. All right, feel like giving me a hand? We'll wrestle these planks out of here?
Yeah, let's do it.
So it looks like the full-length one's on top. Let's grab that first. So last time, if you remember, oh jeepers, it was almost a year ago now, that we ran out, we had issues with the cedar, and we switched over to oak, and then we just ran out of dry oak planking. So we had one plank that was all made up and just about ready to go on the boat, but we didn't want to leave an odd number of planks on the boat for an extended period of time. So we just left it on the shelf upstairs where Alix is working on the spar. And then there's one that we tried to glue up the oak and it was too wet and the scarves failed. So that's up there as well. We can clean those up and get it re-glued, and we can do the final cleanup on the full-length one and get right to hanging that.
Oh my goodness. Hitting everything. There.
So I think your first mission, if you choose to accept it, is we just got to clean up the epoxy scarf here.
Gotcha.
And then I would just do that with the power planer, or if you want to do it with a beater chisel, whatever floats your boat.
Cool.
And then I would take the power planer and just knock this down a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely proud right now.
Yeah.
And see if you've got any other like really obvious high spots or places where we put a grading piece in, like that.
It's there.
Yeah. Snip those down. And then when you're good with that, we can get it stood up on edge, and we'll just set the fence on the rabbit plane and run down.
Awesome.
And make both of these nice and smooth and fair and 90 degrees.
Awesome.
And then we'll put it on the boat. And like I was saying, since we're on that outside face of the hull right now, by leaving them both 90, pretty much establishes the top level. And then we can knock off those inner corners a little bit and set it down. And that's been working pretty well. And once we put it onto the hull, we'll figure out what the backing out looks like.
Okay.
We'll go down, and right before we put it on, we'll check and see if it's worth backing out at all before it goes onto the boat. Look at all those shavings you made!
I know, I'm so fast at things.
You got some real coarse ones coming out of there, huh?
It's a serious plane, man.
Those are Alright, I'm just gonna throw it and you're gonna catch it, right?
Yeah.
Shall we go pick out smoke?
I think that's a great idea.
Let's go see what we got.
It's pretty clear.
There's some that are like just perfectly clear. Yeah. Yeah, this is some real good stuff.
Sweet.
All right, yeah, I guess let's grab a couple sawhorses.
Okay.
And we'll pull out enough for a couple planks.
Sweet.
We've got to get 8 oak planks out of this whole stack, which
I think we can.
I think we can too, yeah. I guess we'll start with this top one.
Yeah, I think we can get some out of this side.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a run here. Oh!
Wanna put it down and then jump down? Ready.
These are so much lighter than we put them in here.
Oh, good.
We wouldn't be picking it up
No.
when they were green.
No. Oh, the other side looks even nicer, except for that thing.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Alix was starting to get the finished shape out of the mast. And keep in mind that this is just a quick look through a couple of days that it took to cut this down with the draw knife.
I'm gonna put them on the picnic table.
I'll feed them to you, and then, yep, if you can muscle them onto the picnic table,
You got it.
and then we'll go from there. Just watch the temp gauge.
So we're going from like 2 to 1.5.
Yeah, we're going from, some of them are 2.5,
Okay.
and we're gonna go down to, yeah, just a bit over 1.5. I'll stop on this at 1.5, and that's a little proud.
Sure, sure.
And then we'll bring them in and run them through the delta.
Don't forget, if that overheats on you somewhat, if they put a box fan in front of it and blowing air this way through it,
So far, it's been
it'll
great.
really help.
It's been hitting like 170, 180, and just holding
good.
there.
Yeah, well, it's probably got a 180 furnace.
Just that, yeah.
Okay, have fun.
Thank you.
Don't work too hard.
Yeah. She overheated.
Gotcha. Well, that was dramatic.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, dude. I didn't even...
Yeah, so we had to, like I said, keep a real tight eye on the thermostat.
Gotcha.
Put a new belt on it. I wonder if it's slipping.
Maybe.
Oh yeah, belt's real loose.
Oh, good.
That'll do it.
I'll do her. All right, let's try again. I think it's a little narrow, but it's nice and straight. There's no knot that we can probably avoid. No knot that we can probably avoid.
Yeah, let's do this one. And your end will be the stern.
Great.
While they were inside getting to the final thickness with the delta planer, Carolyn found out the hard way that there was a little electrical issue with it, and Grandpa came out to get that fixed up.
Yeah, I was standing on your little platform over here for the outfeed roller.
Doing the returns.
Doing the returns, and there's like a part where the plywood gives way to pallet, and my ankle just slipped off, so I like leaned forward to catch myself. I don't know, had my sleeves rolled up too, so it's obviously touching both. I was like, whoa! I couldn't let go for a second. I was like, that's...
So in the next video, you can refer to her as your electrifying shipwright.
It's the electrifying shipwright, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a buzz.
So that is why we unplug all the electrical at night.
It's a good idea.
Because even with the switch off, that power was still there. And
You could have gotten shorted at night.
could have got shorted and could have started a fire. And so that's
Nice.
why everything is unplugged. There's no power here at night. And thankfully, Grandpa's got nothing better to do than to come down and chase electrical problems for us. So thank you, Grandpa.
Like I told you, I'll get my ride.
Absolutely. Anywhere you want to go.
Well, yeah.
I think this middle one can probably get flipped.
Okay.
I think that'll kind of go along with our curvatures a little better.
It's crooked.
Oh my goodness.
Put it away.
Alright.
I like that much better.
Thank you.
I think you're good, Steve.
Okay.
One way to find out, tell her to touch it.
Yeah, next time we run it, we'll see if we feel the current flowing or not.
Yeah.
But I would bet just about anything that was it.
Yeah.
That ground was touching the hot wire.
If she grabs it and you need CPR, give me a call. I'll mosey down.
So originally, shows you how much we've learned. We would take and kerf them with the circular saw.
Yeah,
And then I
Hack
found
them
the adze was the quickest way to like knock the kerfs out.
totally.
And then we had one of the cedar boards split in the stern, and we needed to scarf on a new piece. And we didn't want to lose the length from like just cutting square across the scarf. So I grabbed my big chainsaw and just kind of like free-handed along the glue line, and it was like a light bulb went off.
Ding!
And I was like, we should do the scarves this way and never look back.
Never look back.
It's not perfect, but
it works real well.
it's a lot of material real quick.
Yeah.
A lot of masts are typically done in a bullet shape. It's called entasis. So instead of having a column that would be straight, the Greeks put in what they called entasis, and that is more aesthetically pleasing, but it also tends to give a little bit more structural stability. So basically, what you would do is you are elongating the arc of a circle. So you can use any kind of circle. You would just get a quarter circle like this, and you would figure out what your diameters are and what you want to start at. So we're starting at 6. So I just reduced that to 3. You find your initial circumference where you're starting the taper, you find the circumference where you're finishing the taper, and then you just divide sections evenly in there, and you find the ratio of that to the length that you're actually working with, and you mark those sizes on the mast and taper accordingly. So what I did here is, this is 6 feet. My circle is 3 inches, so everything is going to be doubled. So I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections, and I found the distance of that circumference at each section, and then just transferred them on this sheet, which this is 6 feet, so this is an actual reproduction of what the curve would actually look like, what the taper looks like with entasis in it. People were asking us why we even bothered to take the mast down from 7 inches to 6 inches, and wouldn't it be stronger that way, and why does it really matter? The 7 inches in diameter would be significantly heavier than the 6-inch diameter stick. It's just under a third bigger in volume than the 6-inch diameter stick would be. So that's a significant amount of weight right there. And on top of that, the other thing is any part of the boat that is sticking up and that is out there has a force applied to it by the wind. It's called windage. And so a 6-inch diameter stick is going to have a lot less windage, well, maybe not a lot less, but a pretty decent amount less windage than a 7-inch diameter stick. And a lot of people might be thinking, well, you know, it can't be that much. You're only taking off, what is it, a ½ inch on each side. But if you look at this, this is 6 inches, this is 7 inches. So that's all the amount of surface area that has wind pushing on it. So all of this shaded area is going to be extra material that is going to have a force put on it. Now, it may not look like much right here, but if you add all of this up down the whole length of the mast and just add up that surface area, imagine if that were a sheet of plywood, for example, and I asked you to hold that sheet of plywood in the wind, how much force that would be and how much that would be pulling and pushing on you. So that's the amount of force that we're taking off of the mast at that point, or relatively that amount of force. It's that amount of surface area that is now no longer having wind pushing on it, which when you're at anchorage and there's wind, it'll move the boat a little bit less. It'll stop you less if you're going into the wind. So there's a lot of different reasons to take that down. So it's not just weight, but basically it allowed us to take down all of those things. So we took down windage, we took down weight, and the last thing is it allowed us to make the mast completely round and get any kind of wobble out of it. So when we got Victoria, she had been going for a long time, and this mast was not straight anymore. It had been fixed and it had been sanded, and so there were waves in it. Now we know we have a relatively straight stick, and it's a lot more round. It's going to be a lot better for us in the long run. So that is the reason why we went through all the trouble with this.